most people think of Bitcoin and they see the price tag that is above $100,000. They don't really understand why it's above $100,000. The first thing that we try to do is help people to understand that there is a subtle difference between blockchain and cryptocurrency. There's a lot of innovation and technology that is currently happening in the space. Most people, they see Bitcoin, then they see Trump coin, and then they see Dogecoin, and then after that, all of this is just internet funny money without actually understanding what the value behind those things is.
Welcome to another episode of Founders of Finance, where every episode we dig deep into the insights that shape financial success in Australia. We have the real conversations with business owners, investment experts, professionals, and everything in between to bring you real-world stories, insider insights to understand the financial world today. Whether you're a small business owner, an inspiring investor, or simply looking to strengthen your financial foundations, there's something here for you today. I'm your host, Ross Pocock, co-founder of Sternlight Financial, and today I'm joined by Nangi, who is the founder of Glasslane, a frontier technology consultancy helping business embrace blockchain, AI, and the digital economy. We'll dive into how they're bridging traditional industries with emerging techs and what the future holds for digital transformation. So how's your day been today? Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Ross. Great introduction there, and the day has been pretty good so far. It's been pretty good. The markets are treating us well, and Ethereum is moving up in a very lovely direction. So I'm a very happy man.
Yeah, definitely. No, the markets have definitely been going very well, actually. So we'll jump into it then regarding cryptocurrencies, digital currency. What's your best explanation for those listeners who have heard of cryptocurrencies but haven't quite understood it or blockchain in that area?
Right. So the thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency is that what you find is most people get caught up in the valuation of blockchain and crypto. So what do I mean by the valuation? Most people think of Bitcoin and they see the price tag that is above $100,000. They don't really understand why it's above $100,000, but they know that it is above $100,000. And people in the news are telling you that it's going to get up to $1 million. So there isn't a real understanding as to why it's going to get to $1 million, even though there's a lot of people saying it. And then you bring in other projects such as Ethereum or Solana or XRP, and then the waters get even muddier because these cryptocurrencies also have value, but people don't understand why do they have value. So the first thing that we try to do is help people to understand that there's not a subtle difference between blockchain and cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrencies live on the blockchain. They're what enable the blockchain to validate transactions. They're what enable people to exchange value. And they are also what rewards people who participate in the blockchain. So once you start to think about, all right, what does a project actually present in terms of value or use case or utility? That then makes it a lot easier for you to start to understand what is a good investment or a good purchase, or what is most likely going to be a scam. Because the adage in the cryptocurrency industry of if it's too good to be true, that reigns pretty much every single day. That's something that most people are not going to be aware of when they jump into these things. And when we start to see markets moving as fast and as volatile as they've been this year, there's again more confusion, a lot of hopium, and a lot of fear as to do I jump in or do I wait? And I personally think now is one of the better times to actually get involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Yeah, perfect. So you talk about that valuation there of um, because we see it often in investing and in anything there. The underlying valuation is what is the value it brings to the blockchain environment. So how would you say cryptocurrencies are currently being valued?
So I'll say at the moment, the way we want to look at cryptocurrency is, are they solving problems, right? And I'll give you an example such as Ethereum. Now, why does Ethereum exist? What's the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin? You see, Bitcoin gave us that proof of concept, if you will, that you can have a lot of computers around the world doing a lot of computations to solve a certain problem or certain problems. When we built Ethereum, we decided that, well, actually, we can build applications on top of this processing power. We can actually use it to actually execute programs such as smart contracts. And by virtue of that, we can create other applications such as dApps. So, what is a dApp? Is a decentralized application. So, in terms of finance, what Ethereum has enabled is ordinary people like you and I to be able to take our assets, such as Ethereum, and then be able to lend those out and earn interest on that Ethereum as you lend it out to other participants. At the same time, you can use that Ethereum as collateral to borrow stable coins, which you can then use to go and make other investments. So there is utility that you can find within that ecosystem, and that's just from a financial point of view. And what you find is that when you start to look at the broader financial system and how that works, there's a lot of intermediaries. There's a lot of different participants that make a single transaction actually go through. And what cryptocurrency or what Ethereum tries to solve is to remove a lot of those intermediaries that would actually dramatically reduce the cost and increase efficiency. Then, when you use the cryptocurrency, which is cryptographic technology, what that actually results in is a more secure system in which you can operate in. So, one prominent example that I always bring up is JP Morgan. They've been involved with transmitting money from all over the place, from the US to Singapore to Australia, New Zealand, you name it. And we're not talking about your 10,000, 30,000. We're talking several billions of dollars. So when you do a transaction of that size, the fees associated are incredibly cumbersome. It wouldn't surprise me to hear that, yes, we're paying close to $1 million, $2 million so that we can move $2 billion. But then somebody comes along and introduces Ethereum to them, blockchain technology, and says, well, you can actually do the same thing that you were doing before, but it's actually going to cost you less than $20. Now, that is a fundamental shift in the way these companies are going to be looking at how do we actually move money from A to B. There's utility, there's security, and there's efficiency and cost savings when it comes to just the transmission of value from cross-border within internal systems. And all of these things actually add up. So rather than spending millions or hundreds of thousands in fees and so forth, Ethereum gives you that opportunity to be able to do that for fractions of the dollar.
Yeah, perfect. No, so like you say, there's a practical aspect of that because large corporations are always involved in trying to
Mm.
save money
Yeah.
where they can. So they don't miss whether
Yeah.
they pass those savings on to the consumers, another thing. But hopefully, I guess it just means that fees don't continue going up, which is obviously
Exactly.
where the big
Exactly.
aspect. Now, one thing we often get is obviously right now, it's not readily traded over the counter in the sense of you can't just go down to the shop and purchase something within that crypto space. Do you foresee that coming within what sort of time frame? Obviously, this is around crystal ball. We're not going to hold you accountable for it. But where do you see that moving forward?
Well, if you had asked me sometime in October, November of last year, I might have said, oh, I see maybe 2028 getting closer to 2030. But with the Trump administration coming in and them being very pro cryptocurrency, we're seeing a lot of movement in the space, a lot of regulatory clarity that is coming through as to how the cryptocurrency space should be dealt with in the United States. So what generally tends to happen is that the U.S. makes some rules, and then everybody else, copies and pastes that playbook. So what we're seeing in the US, for example, is the Genius Act, which is going to allow um, certain companies, or trusted companies, if you will, to be able to mint stable coins. Now these stable coins would be backed by United States treasuries. So what I foresee is the market is going to be flooded with US denominated stable coins. The beauty about having stable coins pretty much everywhere is that when you introduce projects like Solana, which have a mobile phone, as well as they've integrated with PayPal, you're going to be able to actually use those stable coins to make purchases, be that on eBay or Amazon or whatever online shop that you're using, just by using PayPal. Now, again, do people need to understand the underlying technology, exactly what's connected to what, to allow that to happen? Not necessarily. I think most of us don't really care, what it is that joins to what, as long as it actually works. I want to make a
Yeah,
purchase, I want to buy my coffee, it should just work. So we're going to find stable coins are going to be used a lot more often. We know that as of 2024, we settled more transactions in stable coins than the transactions settled on MasterCard and Visa. So when you see that type of volume and you see that type of activity, you can start to imagine that, well, the future is not that too far off. We're going to
yeah,
have these things, maybe, in the engine, in the underlying systems, where most people won't really be thinking about, is it a stable coin, is it a crypto, as long as it works and it's cheaper. And to that point, when you introduce these systems to a lot of these providers, do they actually pass them on to the customers? Well, I don't know if they will. I can't speak for the good people at PayPal or Visa, but I can
yeah,
imagine that the competition would influence how they're pricing their fees or how they're pricing their services as well. Because again, if you're doing things for a fraction of a cent, well, somebody else can take it down by a couple of cents and they're more competitive, but still earning a tremendous amount of revenue. So that I'm
yeah,
hoping in the next 2 years or so, we're going to see a lot more systems integrated with the blockchain. We're going to see a lot more stablecoin usage around the world. And we're going to see a lot of changes within the regulatory environment, especially in Australia, of how we view cryptocurrency and how we use cryptocurrency and blockchain technology.
yeah, definitely. When you talk about those fees as well, it's quite interesting when at the time of recording, it was only announced a couple of days ago about the Australian government trying to ban the fees from MasterCard and Visa, the transaction fees. So eventually, if depending on how that goes, obviously this can also tie into that competitive market within that
Right.
space to eventually, um, yeah, eradicate it. And obviously, a lot of people don't quite understand it now.
Hmm.
Now, before we get on to you as your company, Glasslane, and things like that, I did want we have a vast majority of listeners in different areas. So, would you be able to explain the difference between a stable coin, a meme coin, and your stock standard cryptocurrencies? Because I think a lot of people can get caught up in within the meme coins, and that's where a lot of that bad press comes from. In that, yeah,
Look, I will admit it doesn't help when the president of the United States and his wife are releasing coins, which are essentially scams on the American public, as well as a vector for to allow bribes and blackmail and so forth. All the bad things you can imagine associated with crypto are happening right before our very eyes. So, as a crypto native, there's things that we see that at first it seems like, oh, this is great for the industry, it's getting more publicity, it's getting more people's eyes on, but sometimes that can be bad. So when we talk about meme coins, what is a meme coin? So the first time I ever saw a meme coin was Dogecoin. This was way back, I would say mid 2010s, and I was still in university at the time. I had just graduated when I found out what Bitcoin was, and then I was reading a forum of some guy who decided that, this Bitcoin thing is such a joke. I'm gonna create my own token just to show you just how easily this thing can be done. So he created Dogecoin. little did you know, a lot of people actually liked Dogecoin. They liked the idea that yes, this thing doesn't actually have any value, but people might be interested in it, and it formed a community. And that community, they create memes, they have their own discussions, forums, groups, and all of this sort of community activity started actually giving Doge value. And then when we had the bull market of, I think it was 2017, 2019, and Doge completely went from less than a cent to close to 30 cents, that created this sort of investment idea that you can jump into cryptocurrency, buy whatever for peanuts, and you'll come out a millionaire. Well, what they didn't understand was that no, there's an actual community sitting behind this particular meme coin. Meme coins nowadays, anyone can make them. I made a meme coin myself not too long ago just to see how easy it is to make a meme coin. And it's literally a two-click process, and you're probably only paying gas fees. So anyone can create a meme coin. But if you actually understand that, oh, there's a community behind this, and I won't mention some of the other tokens that I know, but you can see that, oh, they're making mobile games, they're making toys for kids, they're involved in YouTube channels and TV shows. So there's something there. But again, finding that right meme coin, that right community is incredibly challenging. So I wouldn't encourage anyone who's jumping into crypto to start off with the meme coin because things can go sideways very, very quickly. But then when we start to talk about things like stable coins and other utility tokens, what you find is that with stable coins, that's basically a digital representation of a real world dollar. Right. So we have stablecoin providers like USDT and USDC. How did they get stable coins? Well, whenever they mint stable coins, they're also purchasing US treasuries or corporate bonds or some other asset to actually back up that $1 digital asset, that $1 unit. So what you can do is that you will then be able to trade between different cryptocurrencies because you've actually got a digital token that's pegged to the dollar. So something that we all know, something we can all understand, something we can all evaluate. And the safety, if you will, within stable coins is that they're going to be as volatile as the US dollar. So,
Yeah.
rarely, it does happen, but rarely a stable coin can depeg. But that's because we've discovered that, well, you don't actually have the assets to back up the number of stable coins you claim to have. So you could say we have a billion USD, but it turns out you only have 250 million. Well, that depegs the stable coin, things go a little haywire.
It's
Uh,
interesting you say that. Sorry to interrupt
hmm,
there, but what a lot of people might not realise as well, this often happens within equities as well.
hmm,
So I give a couple of examples. Is there's certain ETF providers, so exchange traded funds
yeah.
that are gold, that trade off
Hmm,
gold, and they say they're backed by gold, but when you actually look in the background, they're not backed by gold.
yeah.
So there's one example, and then another example is obviously GameStop.
Yep.
So how that caused um, that disaster that happened for those companies is a lot of people were shorting the company, and to
Hmm,
short the company, you're supposed to be borrowing the stock.
yeah.
But in doing so, they had shorted more stock that was actually out there available.
Exactly.
So it's not, just to highlight, and I'm not, obviously, this is not advice for anyone or anything like this.
Hmm,
It's just to highlight this isn't just a problem within the crypto world. This is a problem worldwide, no matter what investments you're invested in. And
hmm.
this is why it's important to talk to professionals to actually make sure that what you're investing in actually has the backing that they're talking about, not just, yes, we've got this, when they don't actually physically have that.
And again, to your point, interestingly enough, if you look at GameStop, that turned into a meme coin. That turned into a meme. That's where people were getting into GameStop because while everybody else is doing it, And it's sort of now it was a political message, if you will, to stick it to the corporations or whatever. But yeah, that's meme culture, and that's where you find meme coins. And with stable coins, as I mentioned, the Genius Act does give you a little bit more security in that in blockchain we believe in the adage that we don't trust, we verify. So part of your research is actually looking into the audits that are being performed to see, do they have the assets that they claim to have, and that information is publicly available. So if you find yourself in a crypto project, or you're working with some people on blockchain and they're not able to show you their assets or smart contracts, that's immediately a red flag, like, because you're trying to hide something, right? So once you move from stable coins, we now then talk about utility tokens, which again, even in this particular area, we have so many different use cases, from decentralized computing power, which is being used for AI models, running AI on chain. And then we have decentralized physical infrastructure. So we have other projects which are trying to bring 5G um, mobile internet to different spots around the world, and also try to, let's call it, alleviate people from having to be dependent on their ISPs and or mobile phone carriers. So there's a lot of innovation and technology that is currently happening in the space. But to your point, most people, they see Bitcoin, then they see Trump coin, and then they see Dogecoin, and then after that, it's like, well, all of this is just internet funny money, without actually understanding what the value behind those things is.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate that. Now we'll do a bit of a turn here. So obviously, I want to talk about your company, Glasslane. Obviously, we spoke a little while last week, I believe it was, and
Mm,
we went through the new AI tool you're building, and
mm.
I think it's incredible. So I'll leave the floor to you. No one can promote their company better than themselves. So tell us a little bit about what Glasslane's hoping to achieve, and the AI tool you're introducing and things like that.
So I think, first and foremost, my background was in audit and compliance, and I was in blockchain as a curiosity and as a hobby. But over time, I got deeper and deeper, and I expanded my knowledge on how do these things work. There's a lot of things that happen in the space, a lot of innovation, and like everybody else who starts off, unless you're thinking of it from a technology point of view, you're thinking it from an investment point of view. So I wanted to just figure out, what should I put my money into? What's worth my time? So I used to trade stocks back in the day, and I due diligence then, read a balance sheet, go through the cash flow, you know, get some history on the company, the boards, etc. In blockchain, you don't find that. There's no cash flow
Yep.
statements, no balance sheets, none of that. So you're trying to really understand what is this technology. So you're reading white papers, you're trying to join the communities, talk to the developers, talk to the community managers to understand what is the value here, what are you guys trying to do. So after that, I started to get questions from colleagues and friends about, tell me about this chain, or tell me about this, and tell me about that. And I'd be helping them as best as I could, but then me just saying, oh, this looks pretty cool. I hear next week, oh, I put $20,000 into that. I'm like, oh my God, I just said it was cool. I didn't say put all your money into it.
Yep.
So then Glasslane came about with me recognizing that, as we see more cryptocurrencies, more blockchain technology coming out, a lot of people are going to want to participate, but they won't know how to start. They're probably going to get scammed. Like, I've been scammed myself, and they're not going to really understand how to value what Ethereum is, what Solana is, because you can find a project that actually appeals to you, within whatever area that you like. So when we talk about finance, we could talk about Ethereum, Ondo, all sorts of tokens that are trying to fix the financial issues that we have. But if you're somebody in agriculture, or you're somebody in mining, and you're worried about things like supply chains, then there are projects specifically designed to solve problems in supply chains and providence. So what Glasslane is here to do is to actually help companies to understand that number one, yes, you can invest in these projects as a financial investment to diversify your portfolio, to get exposure to certain assets around the world, or you can actually utilize this technology within your company to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So we know that, for example, De Beers, they use blockchain technology to track their diamonds. Is it De Beers? I think it's De Beers. Sorry, they track diamonds via blockchain to make sure that none of the diamonds that they are selling or distributing have been found in conflict zones and etc. So there's a use of blockchain technology, which they're not necessarily going to go around telling everybody, hey, check out this cool new thing that we're doing. But at the same time, we can see that if you're using it, somebody else will want to use it. And there's that utility. So being able to talk to different organizations about, so what would you like to actually achieve? Do you want to use blockchain to reduce costs, to increase efficiency, add security, or do you want to invest? And if you want to do so, do you understand the chain that you're working with, the tokens or the project? And then we can help you with that research to actually give you the information you need to know, whether it's who are the developers, what is the consensus mechanism, how do the smart contracts work, are there any issues that we want to look out for, can we get insurances on our investments and so forth. So we go through the process of advising you on what these things do. And then there's other activities that you find, such as DeFi, like I mentioned before, the lending and borrowing activities. So some companies may actually, or individuals may want to get exposure to that. So Glasslane tries to ensure that we can have those conversations, show you how these things work, because we believe in we do it first ourselves philosophy before we tell other people to do it. So if I'm saying, hey, this is how we are able to achieve yield using stable coins, is because we've actually done it ourselves and we're monitoring that and we're giving you the insights of our own results and the things that you might want to watch out for. So that's where Glassline came from, just a desire to help people to understand what is this technology beyond the valuation, beyond the markets. So in order to aid me to do that, I thought, I would want to develop an application. And this application, I called it Mirror, and at first was just a chatbot. It was just supposed to answer simple questions: what is blockchain? What is crypto? What is this and that? But what I found over time was that I could ask it more complex questions, and I wanted to get more information out of it. So you can use ChatGPT, you can use Perplexity, you can use Sonnet or Claude or all these other different applications, but they're quite generalist. There wasn't anything specific that would actually tell me what's going on in the crypto space today, right now. So I started to create this model, this application, sorry, to be able to do that. So getting real time cryptocurrencies to come in. We're trying to find ways in which we can monitor places like Twitter and Telegram, where most of these communities exist and interact. So we can get things like sentiment and an understanding of, like I mentioned before, when you have communities, they can then show you where the value actually is. So these are the sort of things we started to put together into a chatbot, and we put it on Discord as a proof of concept. So our beta version is on the Glasslane Discord server, and from there, people have been asking it all types of questions. With regards to, hey, the market has just collapsed today. Why is that? Which is a common question that the bot is currently getting at the moment. But at the same time, we're seeing other questions of obscure tokens I've never even heard of. Tell me about this, tell me about that, and being able to get a response such as the smart contracts or the white paper provide these types of details. It gives you that head start so that you understand what am I looking at. And then if you're wanting to even get even further into how do I do research, I want a step-by-step guide. Well, it's not going to give you just a generic, go do to this website and do this. It's actually going to have some of my own experience of how did I actually go looking for things like airdrops? How did I do my own research for me to have that security that, yeah, this project is more or less okay and they're not gonna run off with my money type of thing. So that's what Mirror is essentially. It's a tool that's supposed to help individuals, not just mom and dads, but even people who are developers who want to get into the technology. We're giving that capability so you can ask it about different technology stacks. And for people like yourself, Ross, like if what happens when one of your clients comes along and says, "Hey, Ross, I'd like to get Fartcoin." What would you say to them?
Look, we are living an interesting world when it comes to crypto space because, from a licensing point of view, we are fairly restricted. But you're spot on in terms of that. When if a client comes to me and says, "I want to get a meme coin," we definitely try to point them in towards the right direction of doing the research and putting them into connection with people like yourself. Who have a greater understanding of these. And this is obviously where you talk about that AI bot will really come in handy for the future of financial planning, I believe.
Yeah. And that was a huge part of even in the development, so that someone like yourself, if somebody comes to you and asks you about a token that you've never heard of before, now you don't want to turn them away and say, you know go away, and neither do you want to go and start figuring out how do I even start to investigate this particular type of token. As I mentioned before, you're going from stable coins to meme coins to utility tokens. Then people start throwing words like social fi and DeFi and market fi, and you're like, how do I figure these things out? How do I tell somebody, hey, I've looked into this. This is what they're proposing that they will do. Is this feasible? Can we see a real world application for it? And one particular thing that I like to think about is NFTs. So, NFTs, there was an NFT boom. People made unbelievable amounts of money. And then that was followed by an NFT crash where people lost unbelievable amounts of money. And people thought, well, NFTs are dead. Like no one's going to need NFTs. There was just this fun little internet image. But then if you were to flash forward a couple of years and you hear Taylor Swift, she's doing a world tour. And one of the big issues is that most of her fans can't get access to these tickets. They're being scooped up by scalpers. They're selling them back for thousands of dollars, outrageous prices. And then you introduce an NFT, let's say the Taylor Swift fan club, and you tell your fan club, all right, here's an NFT. Now, as long as you have this NFT, regardless of what platform you're buying the tickets from, you will always be buying them at the retail price. As an NFT holder, we will reserve tickets for all of our NFT holders, no matter where they are. And if they don't get sold, all good, we can sell them to the rest of the public. But we want to ensure that Taylor Swift's fans actually get to the show. So that's a use case for an NFT. That's something that we can genuinely point to and say, there's a problem and here's a solution. The only thing that's left is having a cool UI or an easy application that people can just download or swipe their credit card or whatever it is in order to get said NFT without having to think about smart contracts, opening wallets, etc., and etc. If you just give it to the people and make it simple and useful, they will use it. They will jump on board. So when we're talking to people about different projects, I'm asking the question, what do you see it doing? What do you see other people using this thing for? If you can answer those questions, we might be able to help you out with terms of how to evaluate it a little bit better when we get into tokenomics, when we're talking about smart contracts, when we're talking about the community and so forth. We'll give you a much clearer picture of what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely. No, that makes sense. And like I say, the technology's there. It's just getting it from where it is to into the consumer's hands at this point, which is
Exactly.
probably the barrier there. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on and explaining
Thank you.
those things and who you guys are. At the end of every episode, we always give the opportunity for yourself to plug something. So it could be your business, it could be an event you're going to, it could be absolutely anything. So I'll give it fire away, plug anything you like.
Well, I think at the moment we have Mirror coming up, our version 3 of the application, and it is a huge step up. So we recently had a director of IT and artificial intelligence, and this man has been able, Dr. Bulu, he has been able to actually elevate the AI. So if you'd like to follow us on LinkedIn as well as on Discord, so that'll be Glasslane on LinkedIn. Feel free to DM me if you want to be on the waiting list, so that you can get access to Miro, and you can give us some feedback on how it's working, and if there's any way we can make it a bit more customizable to yourself and your needs. For example, we want to put Miro onto different websites so that if you are an advisor, for example, and you're getting a lot of questions that you don't feel that you may be able to answer, well, we can actually put Miro on your website so that your customers and your clients can speak to Miro before they have a chat with yourself. And then even for yourself, you can do your own research using Miro to figure out, well, this person's talking to me about ABC. What can I glean or what can I find out about it? So yeah, follow us on LinkedIn, and yeah, we'll have a version 3 coming out soon, which we will open up to a much wider public for testing and deployment.
Yeah, perfect. No, I appreciate that. That's a great plug, and I'll be following along for sure. As always, guys, if you have any questions about the finance world or anything, feel free to reach out to myself or Sternlight Financial. If you want to get in contact with Nangi, and you're not sure where to go, his details will be at the bottom of this, but you can reach out to me and I can put you in contact there as well. So, as always, guys, like and subscribe. We're trying to grow this and trying to make sure that you guys are getting real life conversations with people within the industry. So, appreciate your time listening and thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, Ross. I hope you have a great day. And thank you, everybody, for giving me some time to have a chat with you.